The clock on the wall ticked louder than it ever had before, each second pounding like a drum against my chest. My hands trembled as I clutched the edge of the cold, impersonal desk in front of me, the same desk where I'd spent nearly 3 decades building someone else's empire. The room was silent except for that relentless ticking and the sound of my own breathing, shallow and uneven. Across from me sat Mr. Grayson, his face unreadable behind those expensive glasses he always wore to meetings. His lips moved, but for a moment, all I heard was white noise. "You're letting me go?" The words came out strangled, barely above a whisper. My throat felt tight, like an invisible hand was squeezing it shut. 13 days. 13 days before my retirement bonus kicks in. Grayson didn't even flinch. He just stared at me with this blank expression, as if firing loyal employees was something he did every day, and maybe it was. Maybe I wasn't special after all. Just another cog in the machine, easily replaceable despite everything I'd given them over the years. My name is Claire Monroe, and today marks exactly 27 years since I walked into this company fresh-faced and eager, ready to prove myself. Back then, they called me ambitious, driven, full of potential. Now, apparently I'm expendable. I tried to steady myself, gripping the arms of the chair so hard my knuckles turned white. Why now? I asked, though deep down I already knew the answer. It wasn't about performance or productivity. Those metrics had been glowing green for years. No, this wasn't about work ethic. This was about money. They didn't want to pay out my bonus, a hefty sum earned through loyalty, sacrifice, and countless hours of overtime. And instead of celebrating nearly 3 decades of service, here I was, being shown the door like yesterday's trash. "Corporate restructuring," Grayson said finally, his tone clipped and clinical, as if saying the words made them true, justified somehow. "We appreciate your contributions, Claire, but these decisions are never personal." Never personal. Right. Tell that to the lump rising in my throat or the sting pricking the corners of my eyes. Personal? This was everything. Every late night spent poring over spreadsheets when my kids begged me to come home. Every holiday missed because there was just one more project to finish. Every birthday candle blown out alone because I was too busy ensuring quarterly reports were perfect. All of it wasted, or worse, stolen. They handed me a box, brown, plain, utterly soulless, and told me to pack up my things. Like 27 years could fit inside something so small. Like my life here mattered less than the pens and notepads stacked neatly on my desk. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to tell them how wrong they were, how unfair this all was. But what good would it do? In the end, I was powerless, just another statistic in their endless quest for profit margins. As I walked out of the building for the last time, the weight of failure pressed down on me like a lead blanket. The lobby buzzed with activity, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. People rushed past, heads down, glued to their phones. No one noticed the woman clutching a cardboard box filled with remnants of her career. Not that I expected them to. Why should anyone care? Loyalty meant nothing anymore. Sacrifice? A relic of the past. But anger began to simmer beneath the surface, slow and steady, like lava bubbling under the earth's crust. Anger at the company, at Grayson, at myself for believing any of it mattered, for trusting them, for thinking I was safe. And then, as I stepped onto the sidewalk outside, reality hit me like a freight train. What now? Who hires a 54-year-old woman with outdated skills and no safety net? Sure, I had savings, but not enough to sustain me indefinitely. Retirement wasn't supposed to look like this. I'd planned vacations, hobbies, quiet mornings sipping coffee without checking emails. Instead, I faced uncertainty, fear, and the bitter taste of betrayal. For days, I wandered around my apartment in a haze, replaying the scene in Grayson's office over and over again. Each time, the anger grew stronger, sharper, until it consumed me entirely. Sleep eluded me. Food tasted like ash. Friends tried calling, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. How could I explain this hollow ache gnawing at my insides? How could I admit that after 27 years, I was disposable? One evening, while aimlessly scrolling through job listings online, I stumbled across an article titled Asterisk, How to Take Down Your Former Employer. Asterisk at first, I rolled my eyes. Dramatic clickbait, surely. But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked anyway. The story detailed how a former employee exposed corruption within their company, leading to massive lawsuits and public backlash. By the time I finished reading, my heart was racing. Could I do something like that? Should I? It wasn't just about revenge, not entirely. This wasn't just about getting back at Grayson or the board. It was bigger than that. It was about justice, about holding them accountable for treating people like pawns in their game, about showing others still trapped in that toxic environment that they weren't alone. That change was possible, but where to start? I wasn't some corporate whistleblower with insider knowledge of illegal activities. I was just Claire Monroe, middle-aged and unemployed, clinging to scraps of dignity. Then it hit me. I might not have explosive secrets, but I had something almost as valuable: access. Over the years, I'd built relationships with key players across departments, trusted colleagues who confided in me during coffee breaks or vented frustrations after long meetings. Some even shared concerns about questionable practices within the company, things they didn't dare report for fear of retaliation. If I could piece together their stories, connect the dots, maybe I could uncover something worth exposing. The idea terrified me. What if I failed? Worse, what if I succeeded and ended up blacklisted forever? But the alternative, doing nothing, letting them win, was unthinkable. So I decided to take the leap, to fight back, not just for myself, but for everyone else they'd wronged along the way. The next morning, I woke up with purpose for the first time in weeks. I brewed a pot of strong coffee, grabbed a notebook, and started making calls. Old friends, former coworkers, anyone who might have information. Most were hesitant at first, wary of stirring trouble. But once I explained my plan, not just revenge, but reform, they softened. One by one, they agreed to meet, sharing fragments of truth buried beneath layers of corporate jargon. Each conversation fueled my determination. There was Rachel from accounting, who hinted at suspicious discrepancies in expense reports. Mark from IT, who mentioned unauthorized data breaches covered up by higher-ups. Even Tom, retired 5 years ago, confessed he'd suspected foul play when his severance package mysteriously disappeared. Together, their stories painted a picture far darker than I'd imagined. By the time I hung up with Tom, my head spun with possibilities. Evidence, proof, leverage. Words that once seemed foreign now danced in my mind, promising power I'd never dared dream of wielding. But gathering it wouldn't be easy. It would require strategy, patience, and nerves of steel. Fortunately, I had plenty of practice keeping calm under pressure. Weeks turned into months as I pieced together the puzzle, slowly unraveling the tangled web of deceit hidden beneath the company's polished facade. Late nights became my norm again, though this time I worked for myself rather than someone else's bottom line. Coffee cups piled up on my kitchen counter, alongside stacks of documents, screenshots, and scribbled notes. My living room transformed into a makeshift war room, complete with sticky notes plastered across the walls. With each new discovery, my confidence grew. This wasn't just about taking down Grayson anymore. It was about dismantling an entire system designed to exploit and discard people like me. And yet, doubts lingered. Was I biting off more than I could chew? Could I really pull this off without getting caught? The risks loomed large, casting shadows over my newfound resolve. Still, I pressed on, because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about revenge. It became about redemption, about proving to myself, to the world, that I wasn't just another casualty of corporate greed. That 27 years of blood, sweat, and tears counted for something big. And so, armed with evidence and fueled by righteous fury, I prepared to strike. To reveal the truth hidden behind closed doors. To show them that firing me wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. The plan was simple in theory, but terrifying in execution. I needed to expose the company's secrets, but doing so meant risking everything. If they found out what I was up to before I had enough proof, it wouldn't just be my reputation on the line, it would be my freedom. Corporate espionage wasn't a game. It came with real consequences. But I couldn't let fear stop me. Not now. Not when I'd come this far. I decided to start small, testing the waters by reaching out to an investigative journalist named Daniel Hayes. His name kept popping up in articles about corporate corruption, and something about his writing resonated with me. He didn't just report facts, he told stories, humanizing people crushed under the weight of greed. I figured if anyone could help bring my fight to light, it was him. Reaching out felt like stepping off a cliff. I drafted email after email, deleting each one as soon as doubt crept in. What if he ignored me? Worse, what if he turned me away, or even worse, reported me to the company? Finally, late one night, I hit send on a message that read, Mr. Hayes, if you're looking for your next big story, I think I can help. I've worked at Sterling and Company for 27 years, and what I've uncovered recently will shake the foundation of their empire. Please contact me if you're interested. I didn't sign my name, only included a burner phone number I'd bought earlier that week. Hitting send felt like releasing a bird into the wild. Hopeful yet uncertain whether it would ever return. 2 days passed without a response, and I began to panic. Had I made a mistake? Was I too naive to think someone like Daniel Hayes would care about my plight? Then, on the third day, my burner phone buzzed. My heart nearly stopped as I picked it up, staring at the unknown number flashing on the screen. Claire. The voice on the other end was cautious but curious. This is Daniel Hayes. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by nerves. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward. Yes, Mr. Hayes, I said, trying to sound calm despite the storm raging inside me. Thank you for calling. We arranged to meet at a nondescript cafe downtown, far from prying eyes. When I arrived, Daniel was already seated, sipping black coffee and scribbling notes in a worn leather notebook. He looked younger than I expected, with sharp features and an intensity in his gaze that suggested he missed nothing. You're taking quite a risk contacting me, he said after we exchanged pleasantries. Why don't you tell me why? For the first time in months, I laid it all out, the layoffs disguised as restructuring, the bonuses withheld, the suspicious transactions Rachel had mentioned, Mark's concerns about data breaches, Tom's vanished severance package. As I spoke, Daniel listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes but never interrupting. By the time I finished, his expression was unreadable. This is explosive stuff, he said finally. But Claire, do you understand what you're getting into? If we go public with this, there's no turning back. They'll come after you. Hard. I know, I replied, my voice steady despite the knot twisting in my stomach. But I'm done being afraid. Done letting them win. Either I fight back, or I spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I hadn't tried. Daniel studied me for a long moment before nodding slowly. All right then, let's get to work. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became my confidant, my strategist, and in some ways my anchor. Together, we pieced together a timeline of misconduct spanning years. It wasn't easy. Every step forward seemed to uncover 3 more obstacles, but every new revelation fueled my determination. We gathered emails, memos, financial records, anything that could serve as evidence. Some documents were buried deep in the company's servers, accessible only through old login credentials I'd saved over the years. Others came from whistleblowers who trusted us enough to share their stories. As our investigation progressed, I found myself slipping back into habits I thought I'd left behind. Late nights spent poring over spreadsheets, strategizing moves like pieces on a chessboard, anticipating counterattacks before they even happened. Only this time I wasn't playing defense, I was on offense, and it felt exhilarating. But the closer we got to exposing the truth, the more paranoid I became. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Cars parked outside my apartment, building for hours. Unfamiliar faces lingering near the coffee shop where Daniel and I met. Paranoia whispered in my ear, planting seeds of doubt. Was I imagining things, or were they watching me? One evening, as I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by papers and half-empty cups of coffee, my phone buzzed. A text message appeared on the screen, a single line that sent chills racing down my spine. We know what you're doing, Claire. Stop while you still can. My hands trembled as I stared at the words, unable to look away. How did they find out? Who sent it? Panic clawed at my chest, making it hard to breathe. For a moment, I considered giving up. Maybe Daniel was right. They would come after me, and they wouldn't play fair. Could I really handle that? Then anger surged through me, burning away the fear. No, I wouldn't let them scare me into silence. If anything, this confirmed what I already knew. We were onto something big. Something they didn't want the world to see. That realization hardened my resolve. Whatever happened next, I was ready. The next morning, I called Daniel. They know, I said simply. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Are you okay? I'm fine, I replied, though my voice betrayed the lie. But we need to move faster. Can you get everything ready for publication? I'll do my best, he said. But Claire, promise me something. Be careful. These people don't mess around. I will, I promised, though both of us knew how hollow those words sounded. Days blurred together as we raced against time. Every conversation, every document review, every late-night brainstorming session brought us closer to the finish line. Finally, the day arrived. Daniel called to say the article was ready to publish. All we needed was my final approval. Sitting alone in my dimly lit living room, I scrolled through the draft he'd sent. The headline screamed accusation. Asterisk Sterling and Company, a legacy built on lies. Asterisk beneath it lay the painstakingly compiled evidence of years of deceit, manipulation, and exploitation. My stomach churned as I read, knowing this would change everything, for better or worse. When I reached the end, I took a deep breath and typed 2 words into the reply box. Asterisk publish it. Asterisk. Hitting send felt like releasing a dam. There was no going back now. Within hours, the story exploded online, spreading across social media platforms and news outlets like wildfire. Former employees came forward, corroborating my claims. Journalists dug deeper, uncovering even more skeletons hidden in Sterling and Company's closet. The backlash was immediate and devastating. Grayson released a statement denying all allegations, but the damage was done. Shareholders demanded answers. Customers boycotted products. Employees staged protests outside headquarters, holding signs that read, "Justice for Claire Monroe" and asterisk, "No more secrets." Asterisk, watching it unfold from the safety of my apartment, I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't untangle. Pride, fear, vindication, exhaustion. But amidst the chaos, something unexpected happened. People started reaching out, not just former coworkers, but strangers inspired by my story. Some thanked me for speaking out. Others shared their own experiences of corporate betrayal, seeking advice or solidarity. Slowly, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It had become a movement, a rallying cry for anyone tired of being treated as expendable. And yet, as the dust began to settle, I couldn't shake the feeling that the battle wasn't over. Grayson and his cronies weren't the type to admit defeat easily. Somewhere out there, they were regrouping, plotting their next move. And when they struck back, I knew it wouldn't be subtle. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. Because whatever came next, I wasn't facing it alone. The weeks following the exposé were a whirlwind of legal battles, media appearances, and sleepless nights. Sterling and Company launched a smear campaign, accusing me of fabricating evidence and acting out of spite. They tried to paint me as unstable, desperate, even criminal. But I wasn't alone anymore. Daniel stood by my side, publishing follow-up articles that dismantled their lies piece by piece. Former colleagues came forward with additional testimonies, bolstering my case. Even Rachel from accounting risked her job to provide internal documents that corroborated everything I'd claimed. Still, it was exhausting. The constant attacks wore me down, chipping away at my resolve bit by bit. Some days, I wondered if I'd made the right choice, if the cost of exposing the truth was worth it. Then I'd remember the messages flooding my inbox. Stories of people who had been inspired to stand up for themselves, to demand better treatment, to fight back against injustice. Their courage reminded me why I started this journey in the first place. One evening, as I sat on my couch nursing a cup of tea, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Daniel. The subject line read, "Settlement offer." My heart raced as I opened it. Inside was a formal proposal from Sterling and Company's lawyers, a settlement agreement offering a substantial payout in exchange for my silence. They wanted me to drop the lawsuit I'd filed alongside the investigation, retract my statements, and disappear quietly into obscurity. For a moment, I considered it. The money would secure my future, allow me to live comfortably without worrying about finding another job or paying bills. But then I thought about all the others who hadn't been so lucky, the ones who'd lost everything because they trusted companies like Sterling and Company to treat them fairly. Accepting their offer felt like betraying not just myself, but everyone counting on me to see this through. I forwarded the email to Daniel with a single sentence. Let's take them to court. The trial was long and grueling, filled with tense cross-examinations, heated arguments, and moments where I doubted whether we could win. Grayson took the stand multiple times, his polished demeanor cracking under pressure as our evidence piled up. Witnesses testified about unethical practices, illegal cover-ups, and systemic exploitation. Each day brought new revelations, further tarnishing Sterling and Company's already crumbling reputation. Finally, after months of deliberation, the verdict came in. As I sat in the courtroom, gripping Daniel's hand tightly, the judge delivered the decision. Guilty on all counts. Sterling and Company was ordered to pay millions in damages to affected employees, implement sweeping reforms, and dissolve its board of directors. The crowd erupted in cheers, reporters scrambled for interviews, and tears streamed down my face as relief washed over me. But the real victory came later that week. A group of former co-workers invited me to meet them at a local park to celebrate. When I arrived, I found dozens of people gathered holding signs that read, "Thank you, Claire and Heroes Fight Back." Someone handed me a bouquet of flowers, while another placed a homemade plaque in my hands. Engraved on it were words that made my breath catch. To Claire Monroe, a beacon of courage. As I looked around at the smiling faces, many of whom I recognized from years spent working together, I realized something profound. This wasn't just my victory, it belonged to all of us. Together, we had taken on a corporate giant and won. Together, we had proven that loyalty and integrity still mattered, even in a world that often seemed determined to crush them. In the months that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. I used part of the settlement money to start a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping workers navigate corporate injustices. We offered free legal aid, counseling services, and advocacy training, empowering people to speak out without fear of retribution. The rest of the funds went toward building a modest home near the ocean, a quiet retreat where I could finally enjoy the retirement I dreamed of. On the first anniversary of the verdict, I returned to the park where we'd celebrated. This time it was different. Instead of a small gathering, hundreds of people showed up, former coworkers, strangers whose lives I'd touched, journalists covering the event. At the center of it all stood a statue commissioned by the city council, a bronze figure of a woman holding a cardboard box, her head held high despite the weight she carried. Beneath it was a plaque bearing my name and a quote I'd once said during an interview. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't just about fighting back. It's about showing others that they deserve to be heard too. As I stood there, surrounded by cheering voices and applause, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in decades. Yes, I'd been fired 13 days before my retirement bonus kicked in. Yes, I'd faced betrayal, fear, and uncertainty. But in losing everything, I'd found something far more valuable: purpose. And that, I decided, was worth every second of the struggle.